Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos Tequila is brought to you by those who drink it. We come to you from the Mike Francesa channel on the Bet Rivers Network on YouTube for this Football Friday program as we get ready for the Sunday edition of Week 7, which began last night with a less than rousing but impressive win for Denver. New Orleans couldn't have been more beat up. No quarterback, no wide receivers, beat up offensive line. I mean, I don't know what you can expect. They got Spencer Rattler and a bunch of kids playing wide receiver. They had no blocking, and Denver's got a good defense, even with Surtain being hurt. 33-10, the Broncos win. They're 4-3, which is a nice start considering they're playing a kid quarterback and just trying to develop offense. So it was a triumphant return to New Orleans for Sean Payton. And now the Saints, who opened the season with two big, rousing wins, have been devastated by injuries and now have lost 5 games in a row. And their season's pretty much over. It is a great week of games. Absolutely terrific week of games. Lions and the Vikings. Chiefs and the Niners. Texans and Green Bay in a battle between two of the real premier young talented quarterbacks in this league, in Stroud and Love. The Jets playing Sunday night with their saga against Pittsburgh, and now all the Russell Wilson stuff swirling around that. The Ravens and the Bucks on Monday night in what should be probably a shootout. Both teams have been scoring at a feverish clip in a league that isn't scoring that high. Those two are scoring like crazy. Each one has been over 30 points in the last 3 games. You have 2 Monday nighters this week. The Bears are off. More on them in a little while. The Cowboys are off, and they needed a week off after their debacle against Detroit, and they need to get healthy in a hurry, or the season is going to come just crushing down. And then you have the Giants welcoming in the Eagles, which means Barkley gets to go back and see how he performs in his old stadium against his old team, with the fans obviously paying close attention and him trying to get the Eagles righted because they're just not right. And they should be a little healthier this week. They committed 3-2. The Giants are 2-4, and the Giants will have Neighbors back, but they suffered a devastating injury to Thomas. I mean, you talk about a player they can't replace. There's just no way to replace him, and his absence is enormous. A devastating blow for the Giants. You lose your left tackle, who's finally coming into his own. Well, he was always good, but I mean, really coming into his own. It's just an incredible blow to your offense, and the Giants can't take those hits right now. They really can't. That's a really tough impact, and it will have a big impact on their offense. All right. We mentioned Denver last night. There's another game in London this week, one you could readily miss. The Pats and Jacksonville in London. The interesting thing there is Jacksonville will be one of the teams going heavily for Bill Belichick next year. He's close to Shaw, the owner's son. Shaw has more money than he could ever spend. He is the ultimate international sportsman, horse racing, soccer, football, etc. That's why his team's always in London, because that's his town. They have been awful at 1-5. The Pats are 1-5 now. May came up with an injury in the middle of the week. Don't know his status yet, so it could be back to Brissett in this game, which would make them more dangerous. But Jacksonville should win the game, but you can't take them seriously right now, or as a favorite, because they just can't seem to get out of their own way, especially on defense. I mentioned the Eagles and the Giants, the injury to Thomas. Neighbors coming back. Obviously, all eyes on Barkley, who has had a good start for the Eagles, 482 yards rushing in 5 games. That's just under 100 yards a game, 96.4. He's averaging 5.3 a pop. He's got 5 touchdowns, counting 1 as a receiver. So he's off to a very good start. And how he performs this week will obviously be very interesting, and I would think he would perform very, very well. As I would expect the Giants to really target Neighbors a lot in this game too, but the loss on the offensive line is devastating for the Giants in every way. And the Eagles, who certainly have had injuries, especially to the wide receivers, they're not the same team. There's strife in the coaching staff. There's strife between the quarterback and the coach. Um, it's hard to know exactly where they're going. Now, they're still dangerous, but they're not good anymore. They're not a team you're taking seriously. As a matter of fact, with the injuries to San Francisco, I would think right now you are looking to the north to see where this league is going to go this year. Yeah, you got teams improving, but I think it's the Lions, and you have to take the Vikings seriously with what they're doing with their blitzing defense, and obviously what they're doing with Donald throwing to his receivers, and that they play a big game this week with the Lions at 4-1 against the 5-0 Vikings. The Vikings, who blitz more than any team in the league. It'll be interesting to see how they go up against this tremendous Detroit offense, and that's what it is. Now, Detroit, I think, is the NFC Super Bowl favorite. Right now, put a gun to my head, I'd say it's going to be Kansas City or Baltimore against Detroit in the Super Bowl. But losing not only one of the premier defenders in the league, but losing the leading pass rusher in the league to a broken leg is an injury you're not going to overcome. Now, there's all talks of trades. There's talks of them going after Reddick, who's been allowed to go out and make his own trade, which shows you how just, first of all, the Jets need him. They need a pass rusher. They need an athletic player to play on the edge. It sounds like he and the Jets are done. The Jets are going to wind up big losers in this deal. And it really is just a total loss for their front office. It's just an embarrassing loss for their front office when he is finally dealt off wherever he winds up going. Whether he winds up going to Detroit or going to San Francisco or going to Dallas or wherever he winds up going, it's going to be just a real loss for the Jets, who are going to get nothing back for him. Maybe a sixth rounder. Chiefs, one of the two unbeatens, get San Francisco, which is still not healthy, in the big 4 o'clock game. So the Chiefs will go up against the 500 Niners. Niners can obviously play with the Chiefs. They're not physically ready for this Super Bowl rematch. The Chiefs are out there hunting for an offensive weapon. They want to go out, and let's be honest, they've really done a nice job with some retreads. You know, they've put retreads in the running back position. They've put retreads at the wide receiver position. They're getting productivity out of them. They did last week. As a matter of fact, they got really good productivity last week out of guys that, and they're not the same offense anymore because they don't have explosiveness at the wide receiver position, but they are doing a good job of, getting good production from places you wouldn't expect it. Like Hunt got 27 carries for 102 when they beat the Saints. Now, the Saints were banged up, we understand that, but 102 out of Hunt, who was on the scrap heap. Smith-Schuster, 7 catches for 130 yards. These are guys who are retreads. Now, they're out there still looking for a wide receiver. I don't think they're going to get a big name. They had been talking about Amari Cooper, who went to Buffalo, which I think was a great job for the Bills and a great trade for the Bills. Obviously, Adams comes to the Jets. They were mentioned about Adams also. There's been a lot of talk. There's even talk of the Giants dealing Slayton to the Chiefs. So they're looking for a guy, not a star, but someone they can turn into a long, down-the-field weapon. somebody who can make some long pass plays for them, can let them stretch the field a little bit. Now you're going to hear talk that Tyreek Hill's on the block. They don't have the wherewithal to get Hill back in the fold. Not many teams do. So I think it's unlikely, considering his contract, that he gets traded, even though Miami may be looking to do that. And there are going to be some prominent names traded where there already have been. There will be more. But if Hill goes, I doubt it will be to Kansas City. If Hill went to Kansas City, they'd be a solid favorite to win the Super Bowl because their defense is really good. I think Chris Jones is the best defensive player in the league. And from that standpoint, it would really be an amazing achievement if they were able to do that. I really don't think that it can happen. I don't think they could get him financially compensated and happy and get him under the cap. I just don't think they can do it. I think it's unlikely. Detroit's clearly going to get somebody to replace Hutchinson. You don't replace Hutchinson. There's no, and that break in their romping 47-9 win over the Cowboys could cost them a trip to the Super Bowl. It could cost them a Super Bowl. They have to be able to replace, because they're not a great defensive team. You can throw the ball on them all night. The problem is, how do you replace a guy like this? And they don't have access to, you're not going to find too many players who are going to make a difference. Reddick could make a difference, and he could go to a team that could win a Super Bowl. So it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds the next couple of days. Now, as we said, big games, Lions and Vikings. Someone's coming out of there either 6-0 or 5-1 and in commanding position. If the Vikings win, I think people have been reluctant around the league to take the Vikings seriously. They're blitzing like crazy, and Flores has done a nice job with the defense. Sam Darnold's done an excellent job so far. He's got weapons. We know that. Plenty of weapons. Now, Sam has thrown 11 touchdown passes. He will throw picks. He will throw turnover-worthy plays. He's got 4 picks already. He will turn the ball over, but he is being highly productive in terms of overall. He's throwing the ball. He's averaging 220 yards passing a game, which is a high number in the league this year. A number that's up there. He's averaging 8.1 yards per attempt, which is a big number. He's getting the ball to the guys he needs to get the ball to. Jefferson's got 4 touchdowns, and he's averaging 17 yards a catch. They're very dangerous. The Lions have the best offensive line in the league, which is a good matchup. And they have weapons on top of weapons on top of weapons. They're an incredibly good offensive team. I mean, when you can look what Goff's done, and he's good against the blitz. You have Gibbs and Montgomery, and you have really Laporta and Brown and Williams and Patrick and Raymond. I mean, that team's loaded behind the best offensive line in the league. So it's a classic matchup. The Lions are better, but they're in Minnesota this week, and they're coming off the loss to Hutchinson. Interesting to see what happens there in what is a very big game. Texans and Packers. I mentioned to you last week that I think there's 2 teams that have the potential to make quantum leaps. One is Baltimore, because they're rebuilding the defensive staff. They had to do work on the offensive line. They had to do work throughout the defense. And the other is Green Bay. They have to get better defensively. They had to overcome the injury to Love, but they're explosive. And now you have these 2 guys who are not up-and-comers at quarterback. They are elite quarterbacks without question. Stroud and Love are the real thing. They are premier players who are on their way to superstardom. I don't think there's any question. And here's a matchup with the 5-1 Texans and the 4-2 Packers, and it should be a offensive show because neither one's great defensively. I'd be very surprised if that's not the case. Seattle is in Atlanta. They've lost 3 games in a row. Atlanta's 4-2. Last week they did away with Carolina comfortably. Falcons go to 5-2 here with their offense, with what they've done with their defense. They are a legitimate threat in the NFC. Buffalo gets Amari Cooper off their win against the Jets. They get the Titans, who are rebuilding, to say the least. Buffalo will go to 5-2. If the Jets lose to Pittsburgh, which I don't like that matchup from their standpoint, Buffalo has a commanding lead in the division. Bengals and Browns. Browns are a complete mess. Cooper's gone now. He wanted to get out of there. You know that the Browns have not scored 20 points in a game this year? Not once. They have not scored 20 points in a loss. They have not scored 20. They only have one win. That was week 1 against Jacksonville. They have not scored 20 points in a game this year. Here come the Bengals, who are playing better. Browns have lost 4 straight. Obviously, big rivalry. Huge rivalry. But Cleveland is a mess. A complete mess. While Cincinnati is starting to piece it back together, I would expect them to win again. Dolphins 2-3 against the 3-3 Colts. Don't know who's going to quarterback for the Colts. I think Flacco's better in short doses. Coming off the bench, if the young quarterback is having a bad day or he's banged up again because he's always running with the ball, that's when he works best. When he's there all the time, the offense starts to bog down. He starts to get too many 3-and-outs. Now, the one thing Flacco does is Flacco wants to throw the ball down the field. If you want the ball down the field, nobody's putting it down the field more than he is. And he can move the club. I think this is a big game for the Colts. I don't think the Dolphins are going anywhere. And they do get Ashawn back this week. Colts are not good defensively. Taylor, I don't know yet about the ankle. Don't know who's starting a quarterback for the Colts yet. Either way, I think you'll probably see both of them play. Colts are 3-3. If they get this to 4-3, they're well coached. They could start to improve, and they could be a threat the rest of the way. I think they're going to be. I thought the Colts were going to have a decent year, and it looks like they could definitely do that, but they need to win this game this week at home. Raiders, their only news was that Tom Brady now is obviously officially an owner. He's been approved. I talked during the week about Tom, and I made statements about I don't see how this works for him as a broadcaster, and I don't think it does. It's a very easy excuse for him to get out. I don't know how he likes or doesn't like broadcasting yet, but you cannot have a lead broadcaster and have him be your number one, even if his name is Brady, and have him be not allowed to go inside the team's facility, either team's facility, not allowed to meet with any personnel from the team, including players, coaches, anybody, can't attend practice. So how would you do a playoff game? How would you do a big game? How would you do a Super Bowl if you cannot meet with a coach, meet with a player, meet with a quarterback, meet with a coordinator, be in a team meeting, be at practice, all the things that every analyst does, and lead analysts do it extensively. They rolled out the red carpet. The Cowboys wanted, who Brady's done 4 Cowboy games already, they wanted Brady to be involved. So they knew what they were about. And the league said, no, absolutely not. So it definitely looks to me like this is I don't even know if he finishes the whole year. To me, the future as a broadcaster is nil. And obviously, he will probably start to take a big role with the Raiders. It sounds like he wants to. It sounds like ownership wants him to. So I think he will become very prominent in that role in terms of bringing players in, recruiting players. Who knows? Even working with quarterbacks. Who knows what his role is going to be extensively. But he is now an owner, and that is a very lucrative proposition and one that any player would dream about. Raiders aren't very good. Rams are so beat up. Even though they might start to get some people back, Stafford's on the block, and the Rams are clearly looking to send people packing and rebuild. The question is, do they do it under this head coach? We'll see how that works. Panthers and Washington. Washington should be able to put 40 up on the Panthers. The interesting thing to watch here is there is a mentality that comes with the transition of winning. Washington has been down for a long time. They now have a coach who knows how to build a defense. He's not my favorite head coach, but he can build a defense. They have a budding star with the quarterback they drafted, number 2 in Daniels. They are scoring and have put on a show offensively. They will do that again this week. They are on their way to 5-2, but they're an 8-point favorite in this game. There's a mentality in this league to going to be a favorite and being a winner and winning by margins. That is something that is learned. It doesn't happen overnight. So I wouldn't be surprised here if Carolina gets a backdoor cover in this game, because Dalton will keep pitching. Carolina won't quit, and I'm sure Washington will score high 30s or 40, but I wouldn't be shocked if there was a backdoor cover here. Now, Washington and the Bears play next week. What do you have there? Number 1 pick in the draft, improving Bears. Bears will have a bye this week along with the Cowboys. Number 2 pick in the draft, vastly improving Washington, the city in Washington and the Virginia area and Washington, D.C., and everywhere one who loves and always loved the Redskins. And they were one of the great franchises. They are all excited about this team. Chicago is excited anytime the Bears win. The league is always at its best when the Bears are a factor. They light up Chicago. They light up the middle of the country. Nobody does that for the NFL better than the Bears. Now, the NFL wanted to showcase next week's Washington-Chicago game. They moved it to 4 o'clock. They made it the big CBS doubleheader game. They're putting their big announcers on the game, Nance and Romo, and they are showcasing that game. The league wanted that game showcased in a big way, and they're going to get it next week. They moved the game there, and now it's been a long time coming since you have had the Bears. Can you imagine the last time Washington was in a showcase game or the Bears were in a showcase game? I'm talking about not the obligatory Monday night or Thursday night appearance. I'm talking about where your game really stands out and counts. And that's next week. Bears at Washington. Probably 4-2 Bears, 5-2 Commanders. To the nation. Next week, showcase these 2-star quarterbacks, showcase these improving teams, and obviously lighting up the D.C. area and Washington area and Virginia area and Chicago area. So it's been a long time coming. For the Bears, it's been a long time coming for Washington. Jets, Sunday night in Pittsburgh, off their terrible loss last week. I mean, the Jets should have beaten Denver, could have beaten Minnesota in London, should have beaten the Bills. They lost all 3 games. They're 2-4. They go out and get Devontae Adams. You had all the stuff this week. We know Williams has dropped some balls. We know that he ran a bad route. We know that he took a weird thing when he got intercepted in the Minnesota game and let Gilmore inside him. We know that last week he ran a bad route. The ball got picked off, and Rodgers called him out on it, which made a lot of people unhappy. Bottom line is, it's true. Williams is going to be the odd man out here. You now have Wilson and Adams with Lazard. Rodgers has also been pushing for Gibson to get more time. They also like to throw the ball to Hall a lot. So Williams is clearly the odd man out here. I don't think there's any question. Who knows what his future is? It doesn't really matter. They have another weapon in Adams now. The question is, can they get this thing turned around when you have a defensive coordinator now acting as an interim head coach, having to do both jobs? You have a new offensive coordinator, although the offense looked better last week. The offensive line has to be better. The mistakes have to stop. The defense was incredibly undisciplined last week. Guys like Clemens and Kinlaw, just awful. The Jet defense has to play a lot better. Now they play a very tough physical team in Pittsburgh, which is going to try to pound the ball on them. They have their own little controversy brewing at quarterback. We'll see how that unfolds. Tomlin will not allow that to ruin that team, though. But he has opened up Pandora's box with how he's handled it. But he feels that he's strong enough to handle anything there when it comes to his team, that nothing's going to get out of control. Let's see how it unfolds. It's a bad matchup for the Jets, I think, in terms of character and credibility and coaching and toughness. You have questions about the Jets coaching. You have questions about the Jets' character. You have questions about their discipline. You have questions about their toughness. And that's all the things that Pittsburgh does. What Pittsburgh doesn't do is knock you out of the game offensively because they don't throw the ball well and they don't score touchdowns. They kick field goals and play defense. And they could, if the Jets don't watch it, they could send Rodgers home in a body bag this week with Steelers. They have to be very careful of that. Jets have Pittsburgh, the Pats, and then a Thursday night game at home against the Texans on Halloween night. That's 3 games in 11 days once they get to Sunday. They're 2-4. If you're going to take them seriously at all, they have to win 2 of the next 3 games. I can't give them all 3, but 2 out of 3. If they could get a win against either Pittsburgh, I doubt it. Texans, maybe. They'll beat New England. If they're 4-5, if you look, they play one of the softest schedules the rest of the way. The only game they play against the winning team the rest of the season is Miami. Now, the Colts could have a winning record when they play them. That's the only other possibility. The Jets could easily knock off 6 of 8 down the stretch if they're still playing and their quarterback is playing well and their offensive line figures things out. To the offensive line of individual talents, but they're not cohesively coached yet. And what really irked me with 2 things out of that game that people didn't really talk about that much that really bothered me. Because obviously, Evans Erline missed 2 field goals that he should make, 30 yards, 40 yards. I don't care about the win. After missing one that would have won the game against Denver, that's 2 games that you lose because of the field goal kicker. On top of that, Hall has a breakaway run down the left sideline. He has 1 player to beat, and he can't beat him into the end zone, and they don't wind up getting a touchdown. Unbelievable. On top of that, they score a touchdown with Allen and Smith, who is a borderline Hall of Fame or is a Hall of Fame candidate will be as soon as he retires at left tackle, gets a terrible holding call after the guy's already in the end zone. And they don't score. Jets got down inside the 5-yard line time after time and couldn't get the ball in the end zone. Then they missed field goals. Then they committed terrible penalties. Then they lacked discipline. And on a play where they knew, everybody in the building knew Allen was going to keep the ball, they let him sucker Clemens into a first down. Undisciplined and dumb is a bad combination in the NFL. Monday night, Ravens, Now 4-2. Opened 0-2, and everyone said, "Uh-oh." Now they're 4-2. They have scored 30 points or more in their last 3 games. Tampa Bay has scored 30 or more in their last 3 games. Baker Mayfield has 15 touchdown passes. He hits Evans and Godwin every week. I mean, they both have big numbers every week. Nobody's stopping anybody in this game. This game's going to get decided by, first of all, Baltimore's better. Secondly, we know Jackson's record against the NFC, but more than that, Tampa's going to have to get some turnovers to win this game. If they don't get turnovers, they're going to give up 40, and they're not going to score enough to win. But they're 4-2, and he's got 15 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions, but 15 touchdown passes is impressive. And the Ravens, Henry's averaging 100 and change. He's averaging 117. He's got 117 yards a game, and he's got 8 touchdowns already. What a pickup. I think Dallas feels about not getting him. Jackson, I think he's got 11 touchdowns, 2 picks. And you know what he can do with his legs? Baltimore's a nasty team with a lot of weapons. Chargers and Cards play the other game. Harrison has concussion. I don't know if he'll play this week. Arizona is still Arizona. The Chargers are 3-2, and if they didn't have Harbaugh, they'd probably be 0-5. Harbaugh is superb at getting teams to play fundamental football. Run the ball. Don't make a lot of mistakes. Be physical. Play defense. And they have done that. And he already has changed the character and the discipline and just the feel of that franchise. They are headed in the right direction, and they will win immediately with this coach. He is one of the few coaches who walks in and makes a difference right away. And he has already done that. And he did a really smart job stealing Baltimore's running backs, because Dobbins, who I've always loved, if he's healthy, he's a factor. And this year, he's a factor. I mean, Dobbins missed, if I remember right, he got hurt last year. I think it was game 1. It might have been game 2, but I think it was game 1 that he got hurt last year. He's always hurt. But so far, we didn't know who was going to be the starting running back there. And he turns around and takes the job. And for the season, he's done a really good job. Last week, he had 96 and a touchdown on 25 carries. For the season, he's off to a very solid start, and he should have a good game against Arizona. I would expect him to have a good game against Arizona. For the season, he's got 438 yards and averaging 5.4 a carry, 3 touchdowns. I think he's got another touchdown as a receiver. He doesn't, no. But he's done very well, and I would expect him to have a big game this week. Cowboys, Bears off. Talked about Bears next week. They're 4-2. Are they doing it with defense? Yes, but now the offense is starting to gel a little bit the last couple of weeks, and the quarterback is getting his feet on the ground, and he's starting to make plays. And they have some playmakers, and their defense and their secondary especially playing really well. Now, it'll be fascinating next week. As for the Cowboys, with all the injuries they have on defense, when you have Parsons and Lawrence and Bland, etc., out, I mean, what are you supposed to do? They have no running game. Their future, McCarthy's future, Belichick. Is Belichick, first question you get asked all the time, is Belichick a real candidate there? Yes, I think he is. He could not only work with Jerry Jones, he's got a good relationship with Stephen Jones. And Stephen Jones runs the Cowboys. Jerry is Jerry, but Stephen is going to be there and be the force and the everyday guy. Cowboys, Eagles, Jacksonville. I would say those are the three most logical places next year for him, for Belichick. Cowboys, Eagles, Jacksonville. And I'd make Jacksonville the favorite because Shaw has a lot of money. He has a relationship with Shaw's son, and they could pay him anything he wants, and they'll let him run the franchise the way he wants. They'll give him no interference. That's not the case in Philly, and it's surely not the case in Dallas. So if he wants complete control where nobody bothers him and the owner's off doing other things and has, billions of dollars, then Jacksonville's your guy. Now, it's not as, not as big a splash as Dallas or Philly, but you get to do what you want. All right, I always tell you about the squares game, right? Where you could maybe pick up some cash and it doesn't cost you anything. So here's the deal. Players can play same game parlays on college football and NFL games to earn squares. The exclusive squares game offers additional chances at profit boosts, bonus bets, and $10,000 jackpots. So $10 or more on a same game parlay, and everybody loves same game parlays. That's become the hot thing. You can bet $10 ones, you can bet $50 ones, $100 ones, whatever. And you get squares. And if you match the final score, voila. You might win $10,000 in bonus money. Can't beat it. Now, some emails to finish up. Let me say this about the baseball. The Yankee game was an absolute classic. Yes, the Indians got back in the series. Do I think they're going to win the series? I don't. I think to win the series, they would have to win the next two games in Cleveland. I don't think they're winning two games at Yankee Stadium. Today we'll decide whether this ends rather quickly or is a long series. Heel hasn't pitched in a while. He could go either way. You know he's got good stuff. Both bullpens have been solved. Now, not all the Cleveland guys have been solved, but their main guy, Clase, has been solved. He gave 2 home runs yesterday. He's given up 3 in the postseason. He only gave up 2 in 74 innings on his way to 47 saves and 50 attempts, and a 0.61 ERA. The Yankee bullpen has been solved. They took Holmes out of the park. They took Weaver out of the park, 2 straight appearances. So, the end of the games is going to be ticklish for both teams the rest of the way. Now, the Mets, they have been outclassed. Pure and simple. The Mets magic has gone to the wayside. They're no longer getting big hits with the bases loaded. They're no longer getting big hits with runners in scoring position. They're no longer getting it from top to bottom and everybody on the roster. If that were the case, Winker would have hit a double in the corner last night, or McNeil would have hit a gapper with the bases loaded. Instead, they didn't score a run because Nimmo couldn't run. They've walked all year. The Mets, they were number 2 in baseball in walks allowed. The other team was the White Sox, who weren't a major league team, one of the worst teams, if not the worst team of all time. The Mets have walked 31 Dodgers in 4 games. That is obscene. It's not bad, it's obscene. So, what, even the most novice of baseball fans knows what whip is. Okay? So, in this series, and how you hear how important it is all the time, right? In this series, the Mets and whip is walks and hits to innings pitched for a pitcher. in this series, the Mets have allowed the Dodgers 31 walks in 4 games, the most in the history of baseball in any postseason series. But the Dodgers have had 14, 24, 36 hits. So they've had 36 hits, many leaving the park, and 31 walks. That's 67 base runners. Now, if I throw in an error, okay, or a hits batsman, there might be an extra one here or there. But the point is, you have allowed 12 hits a game, and you have allowed 8 walks a game. You cannot allow them to get 20 men on the base paths in the game and expect to win. It cannot continue. I like Peterson as the pitcher. I couldn't go back to Senga, not with the season on the line. If you're a Met fan, you've had a great run if it ends today. If it's over today and they play at 5 and the Yankees play at 8, if it's over today, you tip your cap and you had a great season, an unexpected season, a wonderful season. I understand this series will leave a bad taste in your mouth for a day or two, but it's been a great run. If they win this game and push this back to LA, it will just add to what they have shown you this year. That resiliency and that cohesiveness and that unity that rare teams have. They've had that all year. So I would expect a good effort today. The one problem is the Dodgers are really nasty front runners. They're bullies. And when they can grind you and push you around, they like it. And right now they're pushing the Mets all over the building. And you know, when Ohtani comes up and flexes his muscles right out of the box, and then you're afraid of him the rest of the game, it hurts. And when Betts starts hitting behind him and starts hitting doubles and homers, it hurts. And then they bring guys out of the pen who just, you know, throw you the most wicked breaking balls and these blazing fastballs, and all of a sudden nothing's working. All you heard about was the magic of the Mets. Now all you hear from the Mets fans is, oh, this guy should be playing, this guy should be playing, this guy should be playing. What is he doing playing this guy? Hey, this manager has pushed the right buttons all year. He has done nothing short of a brilliant job. You can't manage a team much better than he's managed this franchise this year. That's how good he's been. I compared him to Francona, who is one of the great managers I've ever seen. So you got to back off that a little. Played Alvarez yesterday because Alvarez gets more out of Quintana than anybody else. And that's the catcher's first job. If he's got a relationship with the pitcher, you don't worry about the offense. The offense is secondary to having the pitcher comfortable. Yeah, he needs a day off. Just like Wells. I mean, listen, how long was I yelling about Wells getting out of the cleanup spot? I really believe if Wells is in the cleanup spot yesterday, Class A pitches differently to Judge. Wells is an automatic out now. He's tired, and he's been completely just overwhelmed. He isn't even hitting the ball. I'd keep him on the bench for a couple of days. He needs the time off. Unless you feel you need him defensively. If you feel that he has a relationship with a certain pitcher or you need him defensively, you play him. That's the catcher's first job. But whatever move he made, it worked. When he went to Taylor, it worked. When he went to Bader, it worked. When he put this guy in, it worked. When he put Winker in, it worked. When he was dealing with guys with slumps, when he stayed with them, it worked. The only consistent Met in the series has been Vientos, who's been amazing. He's had an amazing postseason. And he looks like a future star. He no longer looks like a good prospect or a good player. He looks like a star. So now you're down 3-1. You've been kicked in the teeth. Your pitching staff's been embarrassed. Now you just try to win an inning. Take it one inning at a time and try and get out of the game alive and force a trip back and be a pain in the butt. That's it. Right now, you just got to be a pain in the butt to the Dodgers and try and make it work one inning at a time and hope that you can survive and they don't hit you with another onslaught where Betts gets on base 4 times and Muncy gets on base 4 times and Ohtani gets on base 4 times and they each take the ball out of the ballpark. Because then, you know what? The series is over. Dodgers are good. If you notice, they got a couple of players. And they've badly outplayed the Mets in the series. But it's not over yet. So just try to make yourself a nuisance and have some fun. Once you have the dirt kicked on you, then you can have a little fun. Maybe they can bounce back a little from the dead tonight and force this thing back. And then, you know what? You take it an inning at a time. It would have been great to get to the World Series this year. But this team, wherever this train stops in the series, this team has had a great year. I'm sorry, a great year. Nothing short. And that will be the take after the loss. The pain of the loss just dissipates. That will be the take, obviously, all winter long. It'll be, how do we take the next step? And that's the question the owner's going to ask, because he's going to want to take the next step. He's gotten this taste, and he's going to want to take the next step if this thing ends tonight. All right, emails. And I'll take whatever we get here. So if there's some baseball or football, I'll take them both. All right, Mike Francesa podcast at gmail.com. We'll see you after the Yankees and the Mets today. We'll see you tomorrow if there's a game tomorrow. We got one game tomorrow, obviously. You got the Yankees tomorrow. And then if there's a game Sunday, we'll see how that plays out. Now, obviously we have football on Sunday, plenty of that. Now, Roy, would you agree that one of the best moves Boone has made down the stretch was putting Torres at leadoff? Yes. He really didn't have any choice. There was nobody else there who was worthy. You couldn't put Verdugo up first. Volpe wasn't cutting it. At least Torres was hitting north of 325 with an on-base percentage. Plus, he has a little power in the one hole, and he took off there. Torres has played very well offensively for the last 2 months, and he has always been a good postseason hitter. He had a good at-bat last night again for the sac fly. He's a very proficient postseason hitter. I never have a problem, and I haven't his whole career, having him up in a big spot in the postseason because he usually has a very good at-bat. This is Mike. Do you think that after the Jets added Adams, that could influence Reddick to show up and realize he can help the team? Listen, they need Reddick. They badly need an edge pass rusher. Badly. They need an athletic edge pass rusher. That is exactly what Reddick is. Sounds like there's no interest on either side for him to be here anymore. Unfortunately. The Jets completely messed this up. Will Giancarlo Stanton be in the Hall of Fame? Boy, are people thinking differently about him now. Now, I have never supported Stanton being here. I don't like them being bogged down with multiple DHs. I didn't like them being so overly right-handed, which they changed this year. I was never a fan of the look of the team that way, and I think the team has been hurt because it's never been athletic enough. But let me say this. He has always been a superb postseason player. The numbers bear that out. Home run per at bat for guys who have been around enough playoff series, he is second only to Babe Ruth. He continues to get big hits, and he has been the Yankees' best offensive player in the postseason. He will be a serious when you take his body of work, his slugging proficiency, his biggest seasons, and his postseason career into account. And postseason careers carry a lot of weight. I think he will make the Hall of Fame. Mark, well, we all can agree that Douglas seems to have an eye for talent. Why does he continue to escape criticism for his stubbornness, which sometimes hurts the team? I don't think he's escaped criticism. I think his job is really on the line here. I believe if they go shopping for a new coach, which means this didn't click the rest of the season, and Ulbrich doesn't get the job, I think Douglas is probably out too. I think they'll probably start from scratch. And I think he's done some things terribly. Some things well, some things terribly. Donald, despite the Giants' record, Dable has been coaching more like Brian Dable, who we saw in 2022. Instead of the one we saw last year, play it safe. Would you agree? Yes, I would agree. To a point, I would agree. Not having taken the kicker's injury into account in Washington was a big mistake for the front office and for Dable. You got to know better. I see some things I like from him. I see some things I don't like. He's more sensitive than I thought he would be. He didn't handle the Wink stuff well. The way he went about that was wrong. I'm not saying Wink wasn't wrong also, but I think the way he went about that was wrong. I think the jury is still out on him as to whether he is a long-term keeper or not. And remember, he came in as a quarterback guru. His claim to fame was developing Josh Allen. He needs to prove he can do that here. Find a quarterback. Because you know what? You get 10-year runs in this league with a team when you find the quarterback. Jason, what does baseball want to see more? Subway Series or Judge versus Ohtani? You are kidding, right? You're not actually asking that question, are you? Let me say this. The Fox guys have probably been in their respective houses. I think it's the Fox has the World Series, yeah. The Fox guys have probably been at their respective houses of worship for weeks now, hoping they get Dodgers, Yankees. Now, to have Judge and Ohtani on the world stage and on the American stage, as they will, you will get tired of that visual because it will be everywhere. You know, it's like the old days when they had this baseball card called Manager's Dream, Madeline Mays. Okay, this is these two in the same picture. The slugger, the imposing figure. clearly the two best players in the sport. Hey, it's exactly what they want. But let's put it in perspective. Baseball has become such a mediocre TV product that Fox has the League Championship Series on Fox Sports 1, not Fox. Fox Sports 1. I mean, really. And think of this. The NFL will have a first round playoff game, a wild card game between two okay teams. And they will put that game on a pay stream like they did last year. And it got 25 million buys. 25 million buys at I think $5.99 was the base you could pay for it. And after a month you could drop it. You got the service for a month and then you dropped it, but you had to pay $5.99 to get the game. I happen to have that because I have everything, which is stupid, but I do. When you realize that they got $5.99, 25 million people to pluck down $5.99. Now, a lot of people in their budgets couldn't put down $5.99 who probably wanted to, but realize that 25 million people did put down $5.99 for a first round playoff game. Baseball will be lucky to have 9 or 10 million people watch the World Series for free. NFL got 25 million with a first round playoff game paid. That's all we need to say. And baseball would be happy if it got 10 million people to watch the game for free. There's no comparison. They are on different, but so is every other sport. Not to say that it is just baseball, but remember, baseball has always been what's been compared to football. There's not even a little comparison. One is the most important product on television. There is no product anywhere more important than the National Football League. And they know it, and it's true. And those numbers just bear it out. But even with the Dodgers and the Yankees, baseball will not do well in the World Series. The numbers will be disappointing. Now, if you could get it to a 6th or 7th game with a lot of excitement, I think by then you might get a real rating. You might get somewhere in the 18 or 19 million people watching the game, which would be for a bonanza for baseball. But that would be game 6 or game 7. Game 6, 7, the numbers start to really explode in baseball. And I think Yankees Dodgers would be the most optimum, product they could produce. The Subway Series, hey, it was a dud in New York, no less nationally. It was a big dud nationally. And it was a dud in New York, too. But there were a lot of reasons for that I wouldn't go into and bore you with unless they were going to play again. And I think they would be resolved this time. And one of them would be that the Yankees were just extremely smug and didn't take the Mets, didn't have any respect for the Mets, didn't like the idea of even the thought of even losing to them was something they couldn't even comprehend because George would have made their lives miserable. He was making their lives miserable anyway. They were all on edge. They were all unhappy. Torrey was in a miserable mood. And it just didn't have the feel that you would have hoped it would have. The Yankees not being in the World Series for 15 years, they will be a very different group being in the World Series this year. They will be cherishing their position in the World Series because it's been a long time and a long struggle to get back here. if they get there. They're not there yet. I don't want to disrespect Cleveland and give Cleveland a lot of credit because did I think that game was over at 5-3? Everybody thought that game was over. And when Naylor hit into the double play, there isn't a person in the world that didn't think that game was over. That's why it was one of the great baseball games I've seen in a long time. See you later.